She told everyone I chose not to come, but I was never invited. I showed up with a handmade gift and found out I was erased because I didn't fit her aesthetic. So, I turned our sisterhood into a viral comic. And let's just say, the internet picked a side. If you've ever been excluded by your own family or underestimated just for being different, hit that like button and subscribe. This story is about poetic justice, creativity, and getting the last word without ever raising your voice.
You know that feeling when you walk into a room and realize viscerally that you don't belong? Yeah, that was me. But let's rewind for a second. I'm Talia Morgan. I'm 30, a freelance illustrator based in Chicago. I live in a cozy third-floor walk-up that smells like coffee grounds and watercolor paper. My studio doubles as my living room, and most of my mugs have paintbrushes in them. I make my living designing book covers, wedding invites, and the occasional children's book illustration. It's not glamorous, but it's real, it's mine, and I love it. I've always been, well, a little offbeat. Boho, as some people say politely. Weird, as others less generous might put it. I thrift most of my clothes, sketch in sidewalk cafes, and collect dried leaves to press into journals. I talk to my cat Luna like she's my roommate, and to be honest, she has better emotional intelligence than half my relatives. My family, they're more of the polished country club type, particularly my sister Celeste. We're only 3 years apart, but we grew up on different planets. She was the homecoming queen with a multi-step skincare routine by 12. I was finger painting frogs in the backyard. Over time, that gap didn't narrow. It turned into a canyon. But despite everything, despite the eye rolls, the passive-aggressive comments, the way she talks to me like I'm a guest in my own family, I thought I'd show up for her engagement dinner. Be the bigger person. Celebrate her moment. She'd sent out pastel evites weeks ago with RSVP links and dress codes, soft neutrals only because, God forbid, someone wear red. I never got one, but I assumed it was a glitch. I mean, we're sisters. Of course I'm invited, right? I spent 2 weeks hand-binding a scrapbook. Not one of those chuggy glitter glue messes. I'm talking archival paper, delicate watercolors of our childhood home, little notes from our aunts and cousins, and real pressed flowers I picked from our mom's old garden. It was a love letter to our shared past. I tied it with a silk ribbon. It was special. I pulled on my nicest thrifted maxi dress, the one with the embroidered hem, and carried that scrapbook like it was made of glass. When I arrived at the rooftop restaurant, the city skyline behind me, I felt a twinge of hope. Maybe she'd see how much I cared. Maybe this was the start of something new between us. Then the hostess asked my name. She scanned the list, finger trailing down a sleek iPad screen. Then she looked at me with a tight, polite smile. The kind that feels like a slap when you're already bracing for warmth. I'm sorry, you're not on the guest list. I blinked. Talia Morgan, I repeated, like maybe she'd just missed it. She shook her head, apologetic but unmoved. I texted Celeste. No answer. I called, straight to voicemail. A waiter passed by, and I asked, too brightly, if he could check with someone. He smiled and nodded, and never came back. So I stood there, holding this fragile gift, wearing a dress that suddenly felt like a joke. 10 minutes passed. I watched couples laugh over champagne. I saw Celeste across the rooftop, surrounded by perfect people in perfect outfits, glowing under fairy lights and floral arches. And I realized it wasn't a mistake. I wasn't wanted. Celeste and I were never close. That's the polite way to say it. The more accurate version is, we existed in parallel. Same roof, same last name, completely different languages. She was the golden girl, always had been. Teachers loved her, our neighbors doted on her. By 14, she had a curated Instagram, a skincare fridge, and a monogrammed planner filled with color-coded goals. Meanwhile, I was the barefoot kid sketching mushrooms in the backyard, painting with dirt water, and coming home with pockets full of acorns. Our parents tried not to show favoritism, but it was like trying to hide sunlight. At recitals, the whole family would wear Team Celeste pins. When I had my first art show at a local cafe, only Grandma came, and she thought the price tags were part of the design. My dad always said I was unique, which is how people describe a thrift store vase they don't quite know where to put. But we coexisted, tolerated each other, until our mom passed 5 years ago. That's when things changed. Grief turns people into versions of themselves they didn't know existed. For Celeste, it amplified everything. Suddenly, every family event became a production. Easter had a mood board. Thanksgiving came with color palettes and printed menus. She started branding family get-togethers like lifestyle content. #Morgan moments, #blessed and blended, #dinner with intention. And I was the smudge, the clashing mote, the girl who never got the memo, even when she did. I'd show up in my usual linen and cotton blend everything, bring a handmade card or framed sketch, and feel the weight of Celeste's silent judgment from across the table. She never said anything outright, but she didn't need to. The sidelong glances, the way she'd subtly move my gift off the centerpiece shelf, the way she'd introduce me to her friends as the creative one with a fixed smile. Once, she cropped me out of a family photo because I was wearing a mustard yellow shawl, said it threw off the balance. She claimed it was an aesthetic decision, not personal. But when you're constantly treated like a visual flaw in someone else's life feed, it becomes personal, fast. Still, part of me held out hope. Hope that someday we'd turn a corner, that she'd stop seeing me as a liability to her aesthetic and start seeing me as her sister. That's why I made the scrapbook. I poured hours into it, days. I collected tiny notes from relatives, found photos no one else remembered, painted delicate scenes from our childhood. Our mom reading to us under the lilac tree, our backyard tent made from bed sheets, the silly birthday cake Celeste smashed her face into at 5. It wasn't just art, it was memory, it was heart. And she tossed it. Didn't open it, didn't ask about it, just dropped it unopened into the recycling bin like junk mail. My cousin saw it the next morning, half buried under discarded cocktail napkins and wine corks, ribbons still intact. That night, when she finally responded to my texts, it was with a message that still echoes in my brain. Talia, I hope you understand. We were going for a specific vibe. We couldn't risk clashing energies. Clashing energies? Like I was a chakra misalignment, a decor flaw, a glitch in the matrix of her carefully engineered celebration? No apology, no thank you, just a cold, curated explanation that dressed exclusion up a spiritual alignment. That was when something in me began to shift. Not with fury, not with heartbreak, but with clarity. You can paint yourself invisible so many times before you wonder what would happen if you picked a louder color. I could have walked away. I really could have. Written it off as another Celeste moment and added it to the silent graveyard of family slights. I'd done it before. Buried the sting with a joke, smoothed over the hurt with a smile, rationalized her behavior in the name of keeping the peace. But then my cousin texted me a screenshot. Celeste had posted a photo from the dinner. That dinner? The one I wasn't allowed into. She was radiant, of course. Sun-kissed skin, hair curled just right, surrounded by guests all dressed like they'd been styled by the same overpriced wedding planner. The caption? So grateful for everyone who made it, even those who couldn't attend but sent love. At first, I thought, maybe she was trying to save face, avoid questions, spin it as gracefully as possible. Then I saw the comment. A mutual friend had asked, casually, "Where's your sister?" And Celeste replied, "Talia decided not to come. She needed space." There it was, neatly typed, public, a rewriting of history so blatant, so casual, so deliberate that I physically felt my jaw tighten. She didn't just exclude me, she rewrote me. edited me out like a stain on a wedding dress. And not only that, she framed it so that I was the one who had chosen distance, like I was some flaky bohemian too fragile for a glass of champagne and a rooftop toast. I wasn't just humiliated, I was erased. It was one thing to be the misfit in her curated life, another to be cast as the unreliable one in front of everyone we knew. And something in me shifted. Not in a screaming, table-flipping kind of way. I'm not built like that. I'm an artist. Our anger doesn't always shout. It simmers. It finds the cracks. It fills the silence with color and shape and subtle violence. And when we burn luminous. I didn't call her, didn't text. What was there to say? The more I played her words over in my head, Talia needed space, the more I realized how often she had taken advantage of my silence. My choice to disengage had always been her alibi. But this time, the silence was going to speak. The next day, I opened my sketchbook. Not the pretty one with flower-pressed pages, not the polished one I show at client meetings, the one I keep under my bed. The one with ripped pages and caffeine stains and rage sketches from nights I don't talk about. I didn't even have a plan. I just started drawing. At first, it was just thumbnails. A rooftop party, a woman standing outside the velvet rope, holding something delicate in her hands. Another woman inside, perfect posture, perfect lipstick, sipping champagne like it was holy water. The details came fast. A hand-bound gift, a guest list without a name, a social media lie, a sister who wasn't just left out, but rewritten. I didn't think it would become anything. Maybe a visual diary, maybe something to rip out and toss later. But the more I drew, the more it became something else. A portrait of imbalance, of exclusion, of the power of narrative, and how easily it can be stolen. I had never drawn Celeste before. Not really. But now, she appeared in my lines so clearly it surprised me. Her delicate cruelty, her control disguised as aesthetics. The way she used femininity as a weapon, soft, strategic, utterly disarming. It wasn't revenge, not yet, but it was mine. For years, I had accepted the version of me that she gave to the world, the messy one, the awkward one, the one who didn't belong. I had believed it, absorbed it like a truth. But drawing that night made me remember something I had buried long ago. I wasn't difficult. I just didn't fit her story. And if she was going to rewrite me out of her narrative, then I was going to create my own. So I drew. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't care if it was too much. I didn't care if the colors clashed or if the style didn't fit the algorithm. I wasn't curating. I wasn't editing myself to be palatable. I was just telling the truth through ink and paper and fury. She thought she could paint me as absent. She had no idea what I was about to show up as. I started sketching that night, not out of revenge, but out of necessity, like breathing after holding it in too long. The lines poured out of me faster than I could make sense of them, my hand chasing feelings I hadn't let myself speak aloud in years. At first, it was a character study. Two sisters, one all light and performance, sparkling, polished, curated to please. The other, quiet chaos, paint under her nails, always standing slightly off-center in the family photos, if she made it into the frame at all. I gave them names that sounded nothing like ours, but their hearts beat with the same rhythm. I didn't need to exaggerate anything. Real life had already done the work. The golden girl lived for applause, but behind her glossy facade was a hollow echo chamber. The messy one lived in the margins, yet she noticed everything. The cracks in the smiles, the tension behind the curtains, the weight of being the unchosen. I set the story at a rooftop party, a party where the uninvited sister hovered at the edge of the frame. Her gift, a hand-bound scrapbook crushed in the bottom of a recycling bin. Her presence erased with a hashtag. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't meant to be. When I showed the rough pages to a few close art friends, one of them leaned back, mouth slack, and said, "Talia, this isn't just therapy, it's a whole damn graphic novel." So we made it one. We polished the panels, layered the colors, tightened the dialogue. I gave the sisters new names, Astra and Nova, but didn't change their essence. I poured in memories, family photos reimagined in ink, moments Celeste thought she had successfully buried beneath glitter filters and careful lies. We launched it quietly on Webtoon under the name No Seat at the Table. No marketing, no press, just a link dropped in an art subreddit and a few whispered DMs. Then something wild happened. It blew up. At first, a trickle, then a flood. Comments from strangers. "This is my sister. I thought I was alone. I cried reading this." Messages from readers who had been left off wedding guest lists, who'd been painted as the problem sibling, who'd spent years choking on silence. Fan art started popping up. Threads dissected the symbolism. Influencers reposted panels with captions like "the most painfully relatable family story of the year." A therapist even used it in a workshop on narcissistic sibling dynamics. And slowly, people began to put two and two together. They recognized the visual style, the parallels, the uncanny likeness of Golden Girl's eyes to a certain influencer sister's filtered selfies. My art wasn't direct, but it didn't need to be. If you knew, you knew. Then the email came. A wedding-themed digital magazine reached out, asking if I'd be interested in illustrating their next cover story on modern family dynamics and celebration. A soft piece, human interest meets aesthetics. They attached the draft article. Celeste was the feature. She had gotten engaged, and apparently she was rebranding. The article described her as authentic, family-focused, a model of healed sisterhood and personal growth. I almost choked. But buried in the brief was a curious detail. The magazine gave their commissioned artist final say on illustration composition, something about editorial vision. And I was the artist. I should have said no, should have recused myself. Professional boundaries, conflict of interest. Instead, I brewed a pot of black coffee and stayed up until 3 a.m. sketching. I drew her perfectly. Not cruelly, not cartoonishly, just honestly. That smile, too wide, too perfect. The eyes, shimmering but distant. The ring on her finger, a diamond so large it felt satirical, its band slightly indenting the skin like it wasn't meant to be there. A bouquet in one hand, a phone in the other, still lit up with a photo app. Around her, a party, beautiful, but everyone faced outward. No one looked at her. When I submitted it, the editor replied within an hour. "Stunning, evocative, powerful. We love it." They ran the piece as is. A week later, Celeste posted the cover to her Instagram story, trying to reclaim the moment. "So honored to be featured," she wrote, with her signature sparkle emoji and a quote about growth. But the comments? They weren't what she expected. Is this the girl from No Seat at the Table? She even looks like Golden Girl. This art style feels familiar. Hope she invited her sister this time. And then the silence. She deleted the post. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. For years, I'd tried to explain myself, tried to shrink myself, tried to play nice. And for years, I had been invisible. But now I was visible in the way that mattered. Not just seen, but understood. It wasn't about takedown or exposure. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclaiming the space I'd been denied. About turning what was meant to be shameful into something meaningful, beautiful, unignorable. I had always thought my art made my too different to belong. But in the end, it made me undeniable. Celeste had spent her whole life curating a reality she could control. I had simply drawn the truth, and people saw it. We don't talk anymore. There was no dramatic fallout, no last phone call laced with screaming or sobbing, just a slow, deliberate erasure. A few days after the magazine cover dropped, I noticed she'd unfollowed me, then blocked me, not just on Instagram, but everywhere, even LinkedIn. Like she thought I might start uploading panel clips on networking platforms. I didn't reach out, didn't react, not publicly anyway. She was trying to make me disappear the way she always had, but this time it didn't work. Because now I wasn't just Talia, the odd one out, the embarrassing sister who couldn't blend into the curated palette of her perfect brand. I was something else entirely. I was the art. And art doesn't beg to be seen, it gets found. The week after the magazine release, I got my first book offer, then a second, one of the top publishing imprints. A senior editor who'd followed No Seat at the Table since chapter 3 reached out, saying, "We don't want to change your story, we just want to give it a spine and a hardcover." The deal came with an advance bigger than I'd ever made in a year. Then came the email from a university, an invitation to speak about storytelling and narrative therapy in modern illustration. I was going to be a keynote speaker. Me, the girl who used to get laughed at in art critiques for being too emotional. The same week, a small animation studio sent a feeler. Were the rights to No Seat at the Table available for adaptation? I stared at that email for a full hour before replying, not because I didn't know what to say, but because part of me still couldn't believe it was real. Celeste had been building a brand. I had been building a voice. She crafted a highlight reel. I crafted a mirror. And people, real, complicated, broken, beautiful people, saw themselves in it, in me. I started getting tagged in cosplay of my characters, fan tattoos, illustrated panels recreated in short films. One girl messaged me saying, "Your messy sister gave me the courage to go no contact with mine." Another wrote, "This comic didn't just validate my feelings, it gave me permission to exist in them." It was overwhelming and affirming and surreal. At night, I'd scroll through the tags, quietly stunned. The comic had started as a way to claw back some dignity. It had become a movement. Not just mine anymore, ours. Celeste stayed quiet through all of it, not a single public comment. But I heard things through mutuals, distant cousins, friends of friends who still followed her account. She'd stopped posting for a while, then returned with a flurry of brand deals and a soft rebrand into mindfulness content. Lots of beige tones and quotes about choosing peace. But every few posts, someone would comment, "Is this the golden girl from the comic?" Or worse, "Did your sister draw this one too?" She started turning off comments. And still, my inbox filled with opportunities. An indie bookstore wanted to host a launch party when the hardcover dropped. A gallery in Portland offered to feature the original panels in a show called Narratives Reclaimed. A mental health podcast invited me to share my story, not just the comic, but the family that shaped it. I said yes to all of it, because I wasn't hiding anymore. For years, I thought being invisible was the worst thing that could happen. That being edited out of stories, of photos, of dinners, and timelines was the deepest kind of wound. But I've learned something since. Silence doesn't mean absence. And being left out of her table didn't mean I had no place of my own. I built mine with ink and pain and truth. The irony is, I never needed her to notice. That was the old me, bending to be invited, shrinking to fit, biting my tongue for the sake of family peace. That girl is gone. What remains is someone steadier, sharper, someone who knows that telling the truth, beautifully, can be the most generous and the most devastating thing you can do. I didn't scream. I didn't slam doors. I didn't even name names. I just let my story exist, with all its texture and contradiction, and let people see what they wanted. And they saw. The girl who once had no seat now had a platform, And I wasn't just telling a story anymore, I was living it. When people introduce me now, they don't say Celeste sister. They say Talia, author of No Seat at the Table. I smile every time, because for once, I'm not the shadow in someone else's spotlight. I am the light. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't cruel, it's creative. It's reclaiming the story that was stolen from you and turning it into something the world can see, feel, and celebrate. And in the end, that speaks louder than any RSVP.
Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe that quiet revenge through creativity is the most satisfying kind, like this video and subscribe for more stories where justice has an artistic flair.